spooky place.
Listen closely, because the woods remember every scream. 2 campers vanished in Black Hollow 50 years ago, but last night, someone answered their call. Now the trees whisper in stolen voices. The frost crawls with hungry fingers, and something beneath the soil is singing your name. This isn't just a ghost story, it's a harvest. And if you hear your own voice echoing back, run. Too late. You already listened. The mimic in the woods. The forest was alive with the whispers of the wind, the rustling of leaves, and the distant hoot of an owl. Jake and Liam sat by the crackling campfire, their laughter cutting through the stillness of the night. They had come to Black Hollow Woods for a weekend of camping, far from the noise of the city. But as the fire dimmed and the shadows stretched, the woods began to feel less welcoming. Then they heard it, a voice, Liam's voice, calling from deep within the trees. "Jake, help me." Both men froze. Liam's face drained of color. "I didn't say that," he whispered. The voice came again, distorted, stretched, like a recording played just a fraction too slow. "Jake, heal me." Jake stood, his pulse hammering. "Who's out there?" he demanded, gripping his flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing nothing but skeletal branches swaying in the wind. Then, the voice again, closer this time. "Jake, I'm lost. Come find me." Liam grabbed his arm. "That's not me," he hissed. "We need to go. Now." But before they could move, the voice changed. It wasn't just Liam's anymore. It was Jake's too. "Liam, don't leave me here." The words slithered through the trees, overlapping, twisting, as if something was learning, mimicking them. The fire sputtered, casting grotesque shadows that danced like reaching hands. Then silence, a breathless, suffocating silence. Jake's flashlight flickered. In that split second of darkness, something moved at the edge of the trees. A figure, pale, elongated, its limbs too thin, its face a blurred smear. Then the light returned, and it was gone. The voice came one last time, not from the woods, but from right behind them, whispering into their ears with a wet, guttural rasp. "We've been calling for so long. Why won't you answer?" The fire went out, and then screams. The next morning, a search party finds the abandoned campsite. The tent is shredded. The fire is cold, and on a nearby tree, carved deep into the bark, are 2 names, Jake and Liam. But here's the thing, the search team knows those names, because 50 years ago, 2 campers vanished in these same woods. Their names were Jake and Liam. And every year since, on this exact night, something in Black Hollow Woods calls out for help, waiting for someone to answer. The search team packed up the shredded tent, their radios crackling with static. Officer Reynolds shone his flashlight over the carved names. Jake and Liam, his stomach twisting. He'd seen these names before, in the old case files. His partner, Deputy Harris, knelt beside the cold fire pit. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Reynolds didn't answer. He didn't have to. Everyone in Black Hollow knew the story. 50 years ago, 2 boys had vanished in these woods. Their tent was found torn apart, their belongings scattered. The only clue, a single voice recording, a garbled, looping plea for help, played back on their abandoned tape recorder. "Jake, help me." The same words they'd just heard on the 911 call before the line went dead. Back at the station, Reynolds dug out the old evidence box. Dust swirled as he lifted the cassette player. The label read, "Black Hollow Disappearance, October 1974. He hit play. Static. Then Liam's voice, younger but unmistakable. "Jake, where are you? I can't see anything." A rustling. A choked gasp. Then a new voice, deep, warped, wrong, whispering over Liam's. "We see you." Reynolds' blood turned to ice, because that voice wasn't on the original tape. That evening, Reynolds and Harris returned to the woods. They weren't supposed to. The sheriff had ordered the area closed, but Reynolds couldn't shake the feeling that something was still out there. They set up near the ruined campsite, recording equipment running. Hours passed in silence. Then, at exactly 3:07 a.m., Reynolds, his own voice, from the trees. Harris spun, flashlight shaking. "What the hell?" The voice came again, closer now, slurred and wet. "You shouldn't have come back." The flashlight died. Something moved in the dark. Not footsteps, but a dragging, slithering sound. Then a whisper right against Reynolds' ear. "We've been waiting for you." The next morning, Deputy Harris was found alone at the campsite, catatonic, clutching the tape recorder. When they played it back, there was only one sentence, repeated in Reynolds' voice. "It's not them calling you, it's us." And then, faint but unmistakable, the sound of something laughing. The townsfolk never spoke of it, but the old-timers knew the truth. Black Hollow Woods wasn't haunted by the missing campers. It was haunted by what took them, and now it had new voices to play with. Deputy Harris sat in the sterile hospital room, his hands trembling around the tape recorder. The doctors said he hadn't spoken since they found him, but in his mind, the whispers never stopped. "Play it again," they urged. "Hear the truth." His finger hovered over the button. That night, at 3:07 a.m. exactly, every radio in Black Hollow crackled to life. Static. Then Reynolds' voice, screaming. "It's in the trees." It's a wet crunch. Silence. Then hundreds of voices. Men, women, children, all whispering the same phrase in perfect unison. "Come find us." High school teacher Sarah Watkins hadn't thought about Black Hollow in years. Not since her brother Liam disappeared there in 1974. But when she saw the news about the new disappearances, she dug out his old camping photo. Jake and Liam grinning by their tent. But when she tilted the picture in the light, there was a third figure, tall, thin, standing just behind them, its elongated fingers resting on their shoulders. And its face, oh God, its face was nothing but a mouth. Sarah drove to the woods that night. She didn't know why. The radio played static. The road stretched longer than it should. When she reached the abandoned campsite, the tape recorder was waiting for her on a rotting tree stump. She pressed play. Her brother's voice came through, clear as day. "Sarah, we're still here. We're always here. All you have to do is..." The recorder clicked. A new voice spoke. The thing from the photograph, its words vibrating her bones. "Say our name." When the search party arrived at dawn, they found Sarah's car. The doors were locked from inside, the keys still in the ignition. On the passenger seat, the photograph. Now it showed Sarah standing with Jake and Liam, their arms around each other like old friends. And behind them, barely visible in the shadows, hundreds of smiling mouths. They say if you listen closely on quiet nights, you can hear them calling from Black Hollow Woods. Not just Jake and Liam, not just Sarah, but all the ones who came before. And someday, you'll hear your own voice answering. Sarah's lips trembled as the word formed in her throat. The name she'd seen carved into the rotting stump. The name that pulsed behind her eyes like a second heartbeat. "Eaters." The forest exhaled. The ground split like rotten fruit. Hands, skeletal, bloated, some missing fingers, erupted from the soil. Then came the heads, their jaws unhinging with wet cracks, mouths stretching impossibly wide. Not a scream, to swallow. Sarah stumbled back as the first of them turned its hollow face toward her, whispering in a chorus of stolen voices. "You called us by our name. Now we taste your echo." Officer Reynolds watched from the trees, or what was left of him. His skin sagged like melted wax, his mouth sewn shut with blackened roots. The eaters had kept him alive as they peeled his memories apart, savoring each scream. Now he saw Sarah, and his remaining eye filled with black tears. "Run," he tried to scream, but his lips were gone. Sarah's brother Liam emerged last, his body a patchwork of missing pieces. His left eye was Jake's. His right hand belonged to a little girl Sarah recognized from a 1982 missing persons poster. "Sister," he croaked, reaching for her. His touch was freezing. Behind him, the eaters swayed in a grotesque dance, their mouths dripping with something thick and shimmering. Not blood, but voices. Liquid echoes of everyone they'd ever consumed. "Join us," Liam begged. "We're so hungry." Sarah finally understood. The eaters didn't just take bodies. They collected people, preserved them, played them. Like a child toys with dolls, they wore the missing. Their faces, their voices, their hungers, stitching together new horrors from the pieces. And now they wanted Sarah to be their newest addition. The eaters parted, revealing a gaping hole where the tent once stood. Inside pulsed something vast and fleshy, a nest of tangled limbs and weeping mouths. "Home," Liam sighed lovingly. Sarah's legs moved on their own, closer, closer, until the nest quivered in anticipation. Sarah smiled, not in terror, in recognition, because deep down, she'd always known. The photograph in her pocket, she brought it here, 50 years ago, when she was the one who first whispered the name, when she was the one who fed them Liam. "And now, I brought you more," Sarah cooed, pulling a crumpled school photo from her jacket. 23 fresh names, 23 new voices. The eaters shrieked with delight. "Next time you're in the woods and hear your name, answer. Your family's waiting, and they're so hungry." The school photo trembled in Sarah's hand as 23 pairs of inked-out eyes began to bleed through the black marker, soaking the paper with a thick, crimson ooze. The eaters leaned in, their stitched-together nostrils flaring at the scent of new prey. Then the first name on the list, Emily Carter, suddenly unwrote itself from the paper. Somewhere in town, a teenage girl bolted upright in bed, her mouth filling with the taste of damp earth and rotting teeth. Principal Carter found his daughter, Emily, standing barefoot in the backyard at 3:07 a.m., her nightgown caked in mud that squirmed like maggots. "Daddy," she giggled, her voice layered with something older. "I heard Sarah calling. She says I have Mom's smile." Behind her, the family dog let out a wet gurgle as its jaw unhinged too far, its bark distorting into a perfect mimic of Mrs. Carter's voice. "Come play with us, dear." Old man Marlowe watched from his porch as the black hollow water tower wept rust-colored tears on a main street. He'd seen this before, in 74, in 82. Every generation, the eaters demanded a harvest, and Sarah Watkins had always been their best reaper. His arthritic hand shook as he dialed the rotary phone, whispering the words his grandfather taught him. "The Watcher is awake. Light the warding fires." The line went dead. A child's laughter bubbled up from his sink drain. Deputy Harris awoke strapped to a deer hunting stand, his hospital gown stiff with dried blood. Below him, the entire town shuffled in a silent circle, their faces wrapped in peeling photo paper of their own missing loved ones. Sarah stood at the center, her arms outstretched as the eaters poured from her mouth like black honey, reforming into their stolen shapes. Liam with his patchwork skin, Jake with his unspooling intestines forming words in the dirt, and the original Watcher, a towering thing of glue-together yearbook photos, its voice a perfect copy of everyone who'd ever vanished. "We require balance," it chorused. Then the townspeople began peeling their own faces off. Harris finally understood as the first strip of his cheek came away painlessly. Black Hollow wasn't a town. It was a hive. The eaters didn't take people. They became them, generation after generation. And the missing? They were never lost, just waiting beneath the soil, for the harvest, for the reunion. Harris's last thought, as his lips fused together into a new mouth for the watcher. "I wonder who they'll make me imitate next." When you move to a new town, they always ask, "Any family nearby?" Now you know why. Sleep tight. The soil is always listening. The first frost came early to Black Hollow that year. Not the delicate white lace that dances across pumpkin patches. This frost crawled. It slithered up door frames in glistening veins, pulsed across windshields like a living thing, and most disturbingly, it formed faces. The missing, the harvested, their frozen screams staring back from every window. Sheriff Dawson's boots crunched through the frozen grass as he approached the Watkins house. The porch swing moved on its own, chains creaking a familiar rhythm, Sarah's childhood lullaby. Inside, the walls breathed. Dawson found the journal in Sarah's bedroom, pages stuck together with something sticky and sweet-smelling. The last entry. "They showed me the truth. We don't feed them to stay alive. We stay alive to feed them, generation after generation. The more we give, the stronger their voices become. Soon, we won't need to pretend anymore." Beneath it, scrawled in what looked like frozen sap, "They are coming up through the roots." The radio in Dawson's cruiser crackled to life without power. A wet, gurgling voice whispered, "Sheriff, look down." The frost on his boots had formed perfect handprints, small ones. A child's, Emily Carter's. Dawson barely registered the cold before it hit him. The trees were singing, not the wind, not the leaves. The bark itself vibrated with the voices of the harvested, their words pulsing through the frozen sap. "You thought we were taken. We chose this. The first bite is always family." Behind him, the Watkins house exhaled, its windows frosting over with hundreds of staring eyes. Sarah stood in the center of town, her skin translucent as ice. Behind her, the harvested stepped from the frost, not as monsters, but perfect, whole, beautiful. No more pretending. Sarah smiled, her breath swirling into the shapes of missing persons posters. No more lies, just one big, happy family. Forever. She held out her hand. Dawson's wedding ring burned against his finger. His wife had vanished hiking near Black Hollow 15 years ago. The frost crept up his legs. Somewhere, a child laughed with his wife's voice. The next morning, the frost melted into blood-red dew. Black Hollow looked pristine, happy. New families moved into long, empty homes, their photo albums already filled with generations of smiling faces. At the town limits, the sign gleamed fresh-painted, "Welcome home," and deep beneath the elementary school playground, in the dark where the roots twined together, something new began to grow. Something with Dawson's voice. Something hungry for the next town over. Ever drive through one of those picture-perfect small towns where everyone seemed just a little too friendly? Check their family trees. If the roots go too deep, you might want to keep driving. The radio DJ in the next town over didn't notice the static creeping into his broadcast, nor did he feel the thing slithering through the wires, stitching itself into the frequencies. But when he played the next song, the lyrics weren't right. The singer's voice warped mid-chorus, twisting into a familiar choral whisper. "We're on the air now." Across 3 counties, car radios and baby monitors erupted with the sound of chewing. The CDC team found the first mass grave beneath Black Hollow's new community garden. But the bodies weren't decaying, they were blooming. Fleshy, root-like tendrils burst from their mouths, connecting them in a grisly network. The lead scientist recoiled as one corpse's eyelids snapped open, its pupils dilating into perfect black holes. Then it spoke, not in a voice, but in Dawson's voice, directly into her mind. You don't bury the dead here. You plant them. The roots moved faster than the screaming. They say evil sleeps beneath small towns, but in Black Hollow, it grows, and now it's broadcasting. Last question. What song do you think was playing when the DJ vanished? Check your local stations. If the static sounds like breathing, change the channel, or it might change you. Thank you all for watching. Please like and subscribe for more scary stories.